Hello my friends! 2018 is slowly coming to an end, so I would like to revisit the best gear that I have tested or used this year. In this video we will take a look at the best cameras and lenses, so let's get right into it. I will start with one of the most significant additions into my personal gear collection, which is Sony A7 III. This was definitely one of the most anticipated cameras of 2018 because it brought together most of the features that hybrid shooters were asking for. Highlights of this camera are great backside illuminated 24 megapixel full frame sensor and 693 point hybrid autofocus system. Sensor performance is indeed great. It has amazing dynamic range, and shooting at ISO 12800 or even 25600 is not a problem at all if you need to do so. The autofocus is basically flawless, and the battery life is very good as well. The handling was also improved, and I can say that it is good enough, but there is still room for improvement. Especially the user interface with almost no touch functionality feels very outdated in 2018. A7 III is great for video as well, with super sharp full sensor readout 6K video downsampled to 4K, but 4K 60p and 10-bit recording are becoming standards in late 2018, and A7 III doesn't have either of those. Despite that, it is still one of the best hybrid all-round cameras on the market. That brings us to the best video camera that I have tested this year, which is Panasonic GH5S. This is more specialized camera intended for professional filmmakers. It uses 10.2 megapixel multi-aspect ratio sensor with dual native ISO, which is highly suitable for this type of camera. For me, the highlight of this camera is combination of the color science, 10-bit 422 4K DCI video with V-Log, which is still the best footage for color grading out of any camera that I have ever tested. It still uses very rugged weather-sealed body, just like regular GH5, so the controls and user interface are great. There is no in-body image stabilization, which was probably left out on purpose because of the interference with external stabilizers. Also, the diagonal field of view stays the same regardless of whether you shoot 17:9, 16:9 or 4:3 video, because the sensor is multi-aspect ratio, as I have said. The autofocus on GH5S is quite good as well, especially after firmware updates, so for video only, the GH5S is the best camera that I have tested this year. I just missed the option to shoot 4K 10-bit 60p video. GH5S can only shoot 4K 60 in 8-bit, and I hope that it will be added in future firmware updates. That brings us to another great hybrid camera, Fujifilm X-T3. This is the most surprising camera that I have tested this year. The first thing that surprised me was the sensor performance. New X-Trans 4 backside illuminated 26.1 megapixel APS-C sensor is actually much closer to full frame competition than I have anticipated, even if I consider the difference in exposure. The dynamic range is great on X-T3 as well. The second thing that surprised me are the video features, which wasn't really the top priority for Fuji in the past. X-T3 can shoot very nice full sensor 4K DCI video up to 60 frames per second in 10-bit, even though it is compressed 420. There is also F-Log, which is very suitable for color grading, and it is the second best footage that I have tested this year after the GH5S. It is also very nice and very well made camera with great physical controls and film style camera dials if you like those. I do miss the in-body image stabilization in X-T3 a lot, to be honest, because unlike the GH5S, it is supposed to be all-round camera, but I can live without it. You also need battery grip to get better balance with heavier lenses, and the battery life is not great, but overall it is a very good camera, and for some users a valid alternative to full-frame mirrorless cameras. I have also been using Panasonic G9 since the beginning of 2018, and it probably is the most underrated camera of 2018. It is still the best camera that I have tested in terms of the handling and user interface. It also has the best in-body image stabilization on the market, rated for 6.5 stops, which makes a big difference in all-round usability. It also has incredible 0.83x magnification viewfinder, It shoots 4K 60p video with great quality using the whole sensor, even though I miss log profiles and 10-bit, but it is still focused camera after all. I really like the output from the G9 as well. New 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor is in my opinion really good, and the color science is great as well. Low light performance can't match something like A7 III or even X-T3 unless you are shooting still subjects, where the in-body image stabilization compensates for that. It also has 80 megapixel high-res mode. The autofocus has also been upgraded with new firmware releases, and I have actually had really good results with the autofocus in both stills and video. So the G9 is still one of my most favorite camera, and it is just a great workhorse. I've also been testing GX9 and LX100 II, which are options for color shooting and genres like street and travel photography. LX100 II offers great size to performance ratio. It has multi-aspect ratio sensor and fixed 24 to 75mm full frame equivalent lens with very bright aperture, which makes it pretty unique in this size category. It is being criticized a lot on the internet because there is no mic jack and no tilting screen, but I am glad that Panasonic stayed with the original concept with the best possible size to performance ratio, and those who don't like it can choose GX9, LX10, G80 or GM5 instead. GX9 has the same sensor and color science as the G9 in quite small package, especially with small lenses like 20mm f5.7 pancake, and it also has in-body image stabilization. I have tested it in Sardinia, Italy, and it has proved to be an excellent travel camera. The controls are great for the size, and it has a very sharp and bright tiltable screen, which is very suitable for street photography. I actually liked it so much that I bought one, and it is my camera for casual shooting. I just wish it had better viewfinder. Full review of the GX9 is also in the description. I have also tried Canon EOS M50 this year, but to be honest, I haven't used it much. It has great dual pixel autofocus and very good rotating screen with well implemented touchscreen capabilities. On the other hand, fully plastic construction doesn't feel particularly well. It still shoots nice pictures, but the dynamic range is still behind Sony made sensors. Quality in 1080p video is quite poor. 4K video is heavily cropped, and dual pixel autofocus is not available in 4K. It is also not possible to shoot video in aperture priority. There is no in-body image stabilization, no USB charging, the viewfinder is very small, but it is acceptable in that price range. It is still pretty good camera for social media content, and the price is also quite good. For professional work, 4K video and more serious use, I would recommend looking at something different though. Out of the lenses that I've tested in 2018, there were two lenses that were almost perfect. The first one is Panasonic Leica 50 to 200mm f2.8 to 4. This lens has remarkable size to performance ratio. It is just 13 cm long, but it still provides f2.8 to 4 aperture, which is very bright for this type of lens, even if you consider the crop. Optical performance of this lens is excellent as well, and so is the build quality. It is just a bit softer towards the long end, but it is still very sharp. You can also use it with 1.4 times and 2 times teleconverter, which basically makes it 140 to 560mm or 200 to 600mm full frame equivalent lens, of course with loss of some light. It is a great match for the G9 and my most favorite lens in this focal range. The second standout lens that I have tested is Tamron 28 to 75mm f2.8 Di III RXD. This lens is a great way to get f2.8 full frame zoom experience for Sony A7 series at a very good price. The optical quality of this lens is great, it is very sharp, and it has very nice character, even though the bokeh rendition may not fit everyone's taste. Functionality in terms of the autofocus, in-camera corrections and so on is just like with native Sony lens. It is made of plastics, but it is actually pretty solid. The only disadvantage is that it is only 28mm on the wide end, but overall it is a great lens, great value and great match for Sony A7 III. I have also tested other two Panasonic Leica f2.8 to 4 lenses. Those are the 12 to 60mm version and 8 to 18mm version. 12 to 60 is my go-to lens for all-round shooting with micro four thirds and one of my most favorite lenses overall. The highlight of this lens for me is beautiful optical character, which indeed resembles Leica lenses a bit. The sharpness is great, the build quality is exceptional like on other Panasonic Leica lenses, it is compact and it has great stabilization. It is quite expensive though, so the question is whether that character and build quality makes it worth the money for you. For me it does. 8 to 18mm is ultra wide to wide angle lens, and it is basically the same story as with 12 to 60 and 50 to 200. The optical quality is great, character is very nice, and so is the build quality. I think that ultra wide to wide angle lens belongs into every complete lens collection. In comparison with 7 to 14mm, it provides arguably more useful focal range and 67mm filter thread, which is quite important for me. Just like the 12 to 60, it is quite expensive though. Sony FE 28mm f2 is one of my most favorite primes for Sony A7 III. It provides solid optical performance, although it needs to be stopped down for the best results. It is compact and well built. 28mm is maybe my most favorite focal length, so I use it a lot and I am very happy with the results. It is also one of the cheaper FE lenses and it is in my opinion highly suitable for travel photography, landscapes and wide-angle street photography. Sigma 16mm f1.4 is still my most favorite lens for Sony A6500. It provides very good image quality and bright aperture at really good price, and it kind of gives you full frame results on APS-C. It is also well built and weather sealed. The functionality in terms of the autofocus and corrections is basically as good as with Sony lenses. The only two negatives are chromatic aberration and lower sharpness below f2.8, although it is still more than sharp enough for all-round use. It works great especially in combination with Sony A6500 because it has in-body image stabilization, but also with A6300, which is a great budget option. I have tested Panasonic 20mm f1.7 on the G9 first, and it worked well except for the autofocus continuous, but I haven't used it that much. On the GX9 on the other hand, it is probably my most favorite lens. I really like 40mm full frame equivalent focal length, optical qualities are very good, and it weighs almost nothing. Together with GX9, it is a bit like using old optical qualities are very good and it weighs almost nothing. Which is why it is one of my most favorite camera and lens combinations at the moment. One very special prime lens that I have tested is Panasonic Leica 200mm f2.8. It is actually the most expensive piece of gear that I have tested on this channel so far. This lens is meant for sport and wildlife shooting because it provides 400mm full frame equivalent focal length. For what it is relatively small and the build quality is again great, like with other Panasonic Leica lenses. Optically, it is also one of the sharpest lenses that I have ever tested, right from wide open at f2.8. The bokeh is extremely smooth as well. Even though I don't shoot much of sports or wildlife, it definitely is on my money no object wish list, and you will also get 1.4 times teleconverter with this lens, which makes it 560mm f4, and that makes the price a bit more bearable. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.